Hello everyone, welcome to another video, and today we are looking at the final approach mode in the FENIX A320. Now, since I'm getting lots of questions about this mode on my live streams, I thought it is worth covering, so here we go. Normally pilots will fly what's called an ILS approach. You've probably all heard about it, so Instrument Landing System approach. However, these days, especially on some very exotic tourist destinations, let's say here in Europe around the Greek islands, you will find airports that do not actually have an ILS approach. So instead you'll find VOR approaches, NDB approaches, or RNAV RNP approaches. Cool thing about the Airbus 320 is that it actually allows you to fly these non-positional approaches in a similar manner by pressing an approach button and allowing the autopilot to fly the aircraft down on a programmed lateral and vertical path down to its approach minimums. Basically speaking, you can use the final approach mode for the following approaches. That is the RNAV GNSS approach with LNAV VNAV minima, the same approach type, however, just with LNAV minima, and then all of the VOR DMEs, NDB or NDB DME approaches. Now, in this video, I'm not going to cover on how to program these approaches. Here we're specifically looking at the question, when do you actually press the approach button to arm the final approach mode? Now, Airbus has a clear definition, and it's saying it is recommended to arm the final approach mode when the two-way point is the final descent point. Right, a lot of words in that sentence, so let's have a look at some of the definitions. On every approach chart, you will find what's called an initial approach fix. Here in the approach chart in Frankfurt, it's, for example, Kuguk, and on the RMP Zulu 23 approach in Queenstown, it is ICPET. There may be an intermediate fix. In the Frankfurt example, it's Delta Fox 901. And then you have your final approach fix, or sometimes it'll be displayed as a final approach point. In our cases here, it's TTUT for Frankfurt and LARAF for the approach in Queenstown. Now, it's very important to understand that the final approach point, as Airbus defines it in its documents, does not necessarily have to coincide with the final approach fixes or the final approach points that you see charted on these approach plates. So for Airbus, the final descent point is the waypoint from which the FMS segment with a coded flight path angle begins. And for that, you're going to have to look into the MCDU flight plan page. And looking at the approach in Queenstown, you can see that after LARAF, you have a coded flight path angle of minus 3.2 degrees. And that is coded down to the missed approach point. Looking at the Frankfurt approach, you can see the final approach point or the final descent point is TTUT, because from the final approach point altitude of 2,000 feet, we have a coded flight path angle beyond that to the missed approach point, runway 25 left in Frankfurt. However, let's assume that the first coded flight path angle is actually beyond Delta Fox 901. And I can tell you that in the real world charts or the real world FMS, that is actually the case for the Frankfurt approach. And so from Airbus point of view, the final approach point in this case would be Delta Fox 901. So that would also mean that from this point onward, Delta Fox 901, you could actually use the final approach mode. So what's the reason behind the fact that you're not supposed to use the final approach mode prior to the final approach point? And Airbus clearly warns in its document, says, if the approach button is pressed earlier, a final approach mode may engage. As a consequence, resulting speed and altitude management in final approach may be inappropriate before final descent point. And that means that the autopilot may be very aggressive in chasing any vertical deviation that the aircraft may encounter. Also be aware that the vertical flight management by the flight management guidance system is very good if you're flying it with managed descent. And so there is no need to press the approach button prior to the final approach point. And so once you are inbound to the final approach point, i.e. the two-way point is the final approach point, then go ahead and press the approach button. Once all the required conditions are met for the final approach mode to engage, you will see that happen on the primary flight display. So when you follow those instructions, trust me, your approaches will be much more stable and more enjoyable. Hope you enjoyed the little video here. See you in the next one. Until then, as always, thanks for the support and happy landings.